Most people live their lives constantly reacting to external irritants. A sudden lane change on the road sparks a burst of anger. An unpleasant remark from a colleague instantly ruins the mood. A random glance from a stranger causes self-doubt. But imagine that it is possible to free yourself from this dependence on external factors. What if no person, no situation, no external force could influence your inner state? The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This insight captures the essence of true resilience. The external world is often beyond our control, but our responses to it are ours alone. Carl Jung claimed that many people are prisoners of their own reactions. They believe that the world causes them suffering, while in reality, they are simply reflecting their internal conflicts and flaws. And here lies the truth. Nothing can hurt you if it does not find a vulnerable spot within you. If someone's words, for example insults, provoke anger in you, it may be a sign that deep down you fear there is some truth in those words. If being ignored by someone causes pain, perhaps it indicates that you still need external validation of your worth. Different people may perceive identical circumstances in completely different ways, because the key role is played not by the situation itself, but by the inner state of the person. Carl Jung called this shadow work, the process of becoming aware of the unconscious, understanding that every irritation, disappointment, or emotional trigger is an internal signal. Marcus Aurelius similarly urged to remember that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. By changing our judgments, we can achieve tranquility no matter what happens around us. Now, consider the universe, vast, immense, and indifferent. The stars do not react to human joys or sufferings. The planets do not take sides in your conflicts or disappointments. The cosmic dance unfolds according to laws indifferent to personal drama. This vastness humbles us and simultaneously invites us to reflect. If the universe remains unmoved by our petty quarrels and daily struggles, why should we be enslaved by emotions provoked by fleeting external circumstances? Imagine a tiny pebble dropped into an immense ocean. The ripples spread only a short distance before the ocean returns to its calm vastness. The same happens with insults, failures, and pain. They are fleeting ripples on the surface of your inner ocean. If you build your mind as an infinite ocean, vast and deep, then the waves will not overthrow you. They will simply pass. Marcus Aurelius advised us to be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it, the seething waters are laid to rest. This metaphor beautifully illustrates the power of inner steadiness amidst life's storms. Imagine this scene. Two people face the same life trial. Whether it is a painful breakup, financial collapse, or professional failure. One breaks under the burden of circumstances, plunging into despair and self-destruction, convinced of complete loss. The other, on the contrary, sees this trial as a valuable lesson, a stimulus for personal growth, and a springboard to new, higher achievements. The key difference lies in their individual perception of the situation. As Carl Jung insightfully noted, Until a person becomes aware of their unconscious content, it will invisibly control their life, and they will mistakenly take this control for a predetermined fate. In other words, until the individual recognizes those deep stories and beliefs that they subconsciously project onto others, onto the nature of success, and onto their own value, they will continue to blindly react to external circumstances, mistakenly believing that life is something that happens to them rather than unfolding through their own actions and decisions. Think about a star that explodes as a supernova, a violent and chaotic event in the cosmos. Yet, from this cosmic upheaval, new stars and even planets are born. What seems like destruction in the moment is, on a cosmic scale, creation and transformation. Similarly, what seems like failure or loss in our lives can be the seed for a new beginning, if only we change how we perceive it. And here's where it gets really interesting. The more desperately a person tries to control the external world around them, the more power they unknowingly give that world over themselves. At the moment when an individual urgently needs someone's respect, that other person gains enormous power over them. As soon as there is a sharp need for the situation to unfold in a strictly defined way, this very situation begins to control the person. And finally, when an overwhelming desire appears for life to be fair, the individual condemns themselves to inevitable disappointment because reality is far from always matching that idealized expectation. However, as soon as a person gives up the obsessive idea of controlling everything, a miraculous transformation occurs. True freedom arises. There is no longer a need for constant approval from others. The crippling fear of possible failures disappears. The exhausting struggle for the world to conform to personal ideas ends. It's worth thinking about. Truly strong and confident personalities are not those who try to manage every detail, but those who possess self-control, who can remain calm in the most difficult moments, stay unshaken in the face of chaos, ignore offensive words, and not fear the unknown. They have grasped a truth inaccessible to most. Control is just an illusion. And once a person stops striving for this illusory goal, they gain true power. Consider the movement of planets in their orbits. They do not fight the gravitational pull of the sun. They do not resist the cosmic laws. Instead, they move in harmony with them. Similarly, the most peaceful people do not struggle against life's flow, but accept it, adapting and flowing with events instead of resisting and suffering. This is the paradox. When the acute need for everything to go according to the planned scenario disappears, the desired often comes by itself. When a person stops fearing judgment from others, they naturally become more confident. When the desperate chase for success ends, opportunities begin to appear as if by themselves, without any effort. When a person stops resisting the flow of life and begins to go with the flow, everything around seems to miraculously fall into perfect order. This statement goes beyond philosophical reflections, relying on neuroscience data. Cognitive psychology shows that excessive desire to control people, circumstances, or even one's own thoughts generates resistance. It is no coincidence that those who desperately crave love often push it away, and those who fear failure subconsciously sabotage their efforts. Paradoxically, those who cling to control the hardest often feel the most helpless. Therefore, it is important to ask oneself, is a person merely a passive observer reacting to life's circumstances, or are they capable of actively shaping their perception? As soon as the realization comes that external factors have no power over the inner world, life appears in a completely different light. It is about forming an inviolable mind, capable of maintaining composure in the face of any challenges. Imagine a situation. A person is calmly walking down the street, immersed in their thoughts. Suddenly, someone shouts an insult, for example, calls them an idiot, or predicts failure. It is important to pause for a moment and analyze what is happening inside. Often, when facing criticism or attacks, a person involuntarily goes on the defensive or sinks into deep resentment. Emotions overwhelm their mind, leaving no room for sober evaluation. The heart beats faster, anger boils in the blood, and the mind repeatedly replays the offensive words, only intensifying the feeling of annoyance. But imagine a completely different reaction, a total absence of any reaction. No emotional outburst, just calm awareness. This does not concern me. This is exactly the state that Stoics, Zen masters, and even the famous psychologist Carl Jung sought, affirming that nothing external can unbalance a person unless they allow it themselves. But why do most people so easily succumb to others' influence? The reason lies in the false self, a fragile construct built on others' opinions, craving external approval and painful attachment to outcomes. That is why they react so sharply to any attacks, perceiving them not just as insults, but as direct threats to their identity. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow self, the hidden part of our psyche where all our fears, insecurities, and unresolved wounds hide. When someone hits us where it hurts, they do not cause new pain, but only expose what has long existed. If a person were in harmony with themselves, an insult from a stranger would have no effect on them. It would be like a shout directed at an impenetrable mountain. The echo would return, but the mountain would remain unmoved. The real question lies in the origins of emotional reactions. Does an insult cause offense connected with a fear of one's own inadequacy? Does anger arise from disrespect caused by an internal need for universal recognition? Do deviations from the planned course cause loss of self-control due to excessive attachment to a specific outcome? The essence of the problem lies not in external circumstances, but in subjective self-perception. True strength is not in trying to suppress the external world, avoid criticism, or eliminate problems. It manifests in forming an unshakable mind that does not need external validation, is resilient to life's hardships, and understands that control begins with managing one's own perception. This is not just philosophical speculation, but a scientifically supported approach to psychological training. Research shows that emotional reactivity is formed as a habit. The brain develops neural connections reinforcing certain responses. The more a person allows external factors to influence their emotions, the more automatic these reactions become. However, there is good news. The brain has an amazing capacity for rewiring. Modern neurobiological studies confirm that with mindfulness practices, cognitive reappraisal techniques, and intentional exposure to discomfort, Anyone can deliberately train their brain to reduce sensitivity to external irritants. Over time, hurtful remarks lose their sharpness. Unexpected changes no longer cause panic. Life's uncertainties become natural companions rather than threats. And finally, there is a place for true freedom. This freedom consists in the ability to maintain inner peace regardless of outer chaos. It is a state where a person becomes the master of their own mind and no longer a victim of circumstances. This is the path that Carl Jung laid out, a journey inward to meet the shadow, accept oneself fully, and discover the inner fortress that no storm can shake.